Hello, folks. Come on in. Come on in. I have a special conversation that I want you to listen in on. This is actually the second part of a conversation with Dr. Freddie Haynes and Dr. Bruce Williams that we had some time ago. We showed half before. I want to show half now, but I want to show this half for purposes that lead into what Janiyah does. Janiyah is on. Hey, Janiyah.
Hey,
How was your session Monday night? I was about to ask you.
it was very good. It was very good. As always, the Monday night in the academy is live. It's robust. Lots of questions, lots of discussion. So it was really good. It was really good.
Yeah, that's good. The community building aspect of Monday nights, I
Mhm.
think, is so important. It's encouragement for people who need encouragement. It's tips for people who need tips. It's affirmation for people who need to be affirmed, and it's networking. And I think we should really figure out creative ways to really promote that and promote participation in it. And then I also think people would do well to host their own little gatherings,
Yep.
uh, informal. Everything can't be instructional. But I missed Monday night. I was on another session. I have as one of my goals researching an aspect of finance that people keep asking about, and I haven't done enough research into it. And
Mhm.
so Monday night was my first webinar that I attended, not as a participant, to really investigate what's happening in this space. And I hope that in the next 3 months, I'll have enough knowledge to begin sharing uh, some some tactics and some tips. Today, what I want to do, I hope this works. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Come on in. Come on in. What I'm hoping to do is to demonstrate through these two pastors why it's so important for churches, especially, to have a D-free coordinator and a D-free committee in the churches to make D-free happen. On the one hand, I say this in the book that D-free in a church. Hey, Tamika Stembridge, come on, put on your camera and your mic. For D-free in a church to work, it normally requires pastoral leadership
Mhm.
and pastoral spokesmanship and pastoral guidance and advocacy. On the other hand, it also requires people who are not the pastor to really get it done.
Right.
And Bruce Williams and Freddie Haynes are two good examples when you look at what the Black preacher is called upon to do, especially during this pandemic. It is not practical for the pastor to teach the classes. We had in in Pastor Talbot, we had a pastor who physically, personally taught D3 to his congregation on a Sunday night early on. But that's not replicable or scalable. What's more likely to happen is that your engagement team will train some lay people, members of the church, who will execute D3 while the pastor is like the chief cheerleader, but the pastor doesn't have to do all the work. And so what I wanted to do today was to share the second part of my conversation with Bruce Williams and Freddie Haynes, which is not directly about D3, but after the conversation, then the three of us can get back together and we can do Q&A because it kind of shows the dynamics of the Black church. And these are two very strong, very active D3 churches. But
Mhm.
when you hear the pastors talk, you understand why we beg pastors and churches not to leave this on the pastor's plate alone.
Right.
Right.
Hey, Tamika Stembridge.
How are you? Sorry, I'm late. I couldn't find my own link. I was
Listen,
here, set up, and couldn't get on myself.
listen, I have been using the wrong links for the wrong meetings. So I've been sitting and waiting to be let into meetings that weren't even happening while the meeting I was supposed to be in
It's
had
already
already
taken place.
started and
Hmm.
progressed.
I
Let's
was
see.
I think Tamika and I have been in 1,000 meetings. I
Oh,
don't know.
I'm sick of
I'm
everything.
like you. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, good to see Angela from Ghana. Beverly Cooper, she's here whenever we show up,
I
Beverly.
was gonna say Beverly is our D-Free super trooper. She's gonna be wherever we are, and I appreciate it. There's always gonna be
You
a
all
familiar
weren't
face
there,
in the
but
room.
Catherine on your team, Janai, Catherine did a great presentation on the $1 billion challenge for the First Baptist staff the other day. It was outstanding. I was so proud of her.
Excellent. Excellent.
Who else is here? I see some new names. Y'all know more people than I do. Mary Webb Miller. Hello, Mary. Paul Little. Hey, Paul. Richard Gaines. Hey, Richard. Sip Byers. I know Sip. He's a Central Jersey guy. Teresa McLean. All right. So we were talking. Did you hear us talking about Monday night, Tamika?
A little bit, yeah, as I was coming on.
Yeah, I think this Monday night community gathering may be the most important thing that we do.
Yeah, it gets us closer to the community, and that was the goal of this year, is to be as close to people as possible, even though we're as far away as we could possibly be at this point physically. And Monday has really transformed from just us walking through the steps to really providing kind of live engagement for people that are going through D-Free, you know, wherever they are in the process. So it's been really good feedback, good testimonials.
Yep.
I'm glad to hear that. I think we should all be praying for Minneapolis. You know, I spoke to a group of grassroots leaders in Minneapolis about 2 weeks ago by conference call and Zoom. And of course, the trial is coming up. You know, they've started jury selection. But you know what's so tragic to me is that the George Floyd incident happened in Minneapolis. The world responded. Corporations are giving money. People are doing all kinds of things. But the Black community in Minneapolis
Struggling.
is that's right, is struggling significantly, and many people have benefited from their tragedy.
Absolutely.
And it's really sad. I talked to a couple of young men who work in the community. I talked to a young coach who coaches kids, in like AAU football. In fact, one of his former students was one of the players in the Super Bowl. He was so proud.
Oh.
But this trial is going to probably be the biggest trial since the O.J. Simpson trial. And I think we just all have to be focused and be prayerful, especially for the people in Minnesota. So today, what we're going to do is I'm going to play a piece of a conversation I had with Bruce Williams and Freddie Haynes. You remember we had one before where they talked very specifically about D-Free, and they talk a bit about D-Free today. And then we're going to come back because I really want to go a little more deeply into the kind of models that churches have created that are really doing D-Free. We've got Indianapolis as a good model with Emmanuel. We've got Friendship Missionary Baptist Church in Vallejo, California is a great model. And we have a few churches that are getting started.
Right.
So we're going to, and then after the video conversation, we're going to do Q&A, and there may be some other models out there. There may be some churches we don't know about. I always bump into churches that are excited about D-Free. I never heard of these people. Yeah. And so, in fact, one church in Flint, Michigan, sent me an email or text message or Instagram something, and they told me that because of D-Free, they've paid off their $2 million mortgage. Wow. So I sent it to Janai and said, have you heard of these people? She said, absolutely not. No. What happened was I was in Flint right after the water crisis.
Right.
And I was at New Jerusalem Baptist Church, where the music director used to work with me when I managed Tremaine Hawkins like 30 years ago. But members of this church came over to Jerusalem when I was there. And they took the D-Free materials back to their church. And I never heard from them again. Never.
And that's common. That's so common. I just put in the chat, if anybody that's done D-Free with a church or a group that we may not have heard of, or even if we do know of them, share your story with us. Where was it? How did it happen? Because that still is very much a popular thing.
Please let us know. Please let us know. Now, the only other thing you may notice is that I put my social media address on the screen. And I learned to do this from Kiera Sheard.
So people can go follow you and they don't have to look
Yeah,
for you.
it's you don't have to look me up. You can go to Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook and just use this at DB Soaries. And then of course D Free is at D Free. And I find that I got more engagement when I put up the actual social media address than I put up my actual name. So if any of you today are not connected to us on social media, it's at my D Free.
I
That's the
just
D
changed my
Free
name to that.
social,
Yep.
and it's at DB Stories. So you might want to put at D Free in the chat, and that way you can get it. Let's see if there's any chats that we need to look at before we go on.
Beverly says she invited her prayer group to join us.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
Cool JC, first Tuesday of the month.
Okay. Any other chats? Okay. So let's go to the video. Again, by way of introduction, Dr. Freddie Haynes is the pastor of the Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas, and Pastor Bruce Williams is the pastor of the Bates Memorial Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky. And both of them are renowned pastors, great preachers, and they lead what I call traditional megachurches. When I say traditional, they are in the mainstream of Black theology and Black religion, but they just have huge churches. I went to Freddie Haynes' church, and when I was in the sanctuary, I said, Lord, I could put my whole sanctuary in his balcony. He's in Dallas. Everything's bigger in Texas. All right. So here we go with the conversation of the day. Well, hello, everybody. This is an important moment in my life. I have an opportunity to allow you to listen in on a conversation between two of the giants of our church tradition, two of the luminaries of the preaching craft, and two of the most profound and integral brothers that I know. From Dallas, the pastor of the Friendship West Baptist Church, Dr. Freddie Haynes, and from Louisville, Kentucky, Dr. Bruce Williams. I think it says Farrell. I don't know where that comes from, but I call him Bruce. Bruce Williams from the Bates Memorial Baptist Church. Ignore the fact that they're Baptists. They're bigger than denomination. They are much wider than any narrow identity within the Christian church. They are prophets, and they are great friends of mine. I trust them. I love them. I admire them. Thank you, brothers, for joining me today. My goal today is to talk about the relationship between economic empowerment, particularly as we attempt to promote a specific strategy we call D-Free in social justice. But before we get into all of that, I just want to make sure I ask how you guys are doing. We've been pastoring now in a pandemic. We're preaching virtually. We're leading virtually, but we are still serving directly. And I want you, Bruce, and you, Fred, to talk about how are you doing? How are you dealing with your own needs during this time when people are leaning on their pastors more than ever before?
Well, thanks. First of all, thank you for having us on this. And I think I don't know anybody I respect more than you. And, I come to you with a lot of advice from time to time. And I appreciate your perspective on just about everything. So I really appreciate being included in this, and especially on given the subject matter. So thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. I feel honored to be here. Um, I'm it's been a challenge, but one of the things I'm really blessed with um, is good staff. And so one of the reasons why I think we've been able to do well in the midst of it is aside from the fact that some of the things we needed to do now we were already doing, we just weren't doing it at the degree we were because we didn't need to. Uh, they've been able to adapt well. So the staff and leadership have been key. The other part of it is I've been encouraged by the maturity level of our congregation. Even though we don't meet in person and haven't meet, and we don't have a date to meet because the data is more important than the date. So the data will determine when we meet. They have given, in fact, they're giving more this year than they gave last year. So they're supporting the ministry, and they are not only supporting it financially, but they are supporting it and being involved and engaged in the ministries and in the community. And we're a community church. So given that part of it, I've been really fortunate to be able to lean on and give leadership to a church that's prepared to do the necessary changes. We're doing some significant upgrades, and maybe we'll talk about it some later, that is going to make us even more ambidextrous ministerially, online and in person. So in every crisis, there's both trouble and opportunity. We've been focusing on the opportunity rather than the trouble. And so I've been real fortunate with regard to just ministry. There are other demands. We'll talk about that later, but I've been able to shift because of their help. So um, we're making the necessary adjustments, but it's because I got good leadership, leadership and good staff.
Yeah, that's great. You didn't mention the fact that both you and Dr. Haynes are earning your second doctorate degrees,
Right, right.
involved in PhD work in Indianapolis. And so the fact that both of you are able to balance and juggle and juxtapose and do it with such finesse, it's amazing. You are like superheroes. Uh, Fred, how are you doing personally? How are you handling the great pressures of this season as a pastor?
Right. And I want to join in with Bruce, and first of all saying thank you. For me, you are a hero in the work, because one of the things, and I say this and I really need everyone to hear this, when I first got into ministry, I'd been so enamored with the ministry of Martin Luther King Jr. My desire was, how do I translate the ministry of Dr. King, that kind of prophetic witness, into the contemporary, context in which I'm called to serve? And I literally watched you from afar say, okay, this is what you've been asking. Here's how you do it. And so you've been a hero because of your social justice credentials. And at the same time, I've seen you unite in holy wedlock the social and the spiritual, personal piety with public advocacy and policy like no one else. And so you're a hero. I salute you. And I know we'll jump in this later, but D Free is a reflection. We had our largest class ever. Thank you, Jesus. Just in September, when it came to the whole concept of financial literacy and debt retirement. We've had other programs, but I never had the response like we had this past September. So again, you're a hero, and this is a blessing. To your question, I'll put it like this. This has been the most stressful, busiest, innovative, craziest, empowering, uh, enlightening season of my life. It's been the most stressful. I've never been this busy. And it's funny because, like I'm on the plane all the time. Have not been on the plane but once since March. And yet I'm busier than ever before because people can catch you now when you're in town. And given the dynamics of COVID-19, which had me uh, you know, trying to give counsel and serving on all these committees as it relates to, health now, and trying to give a voice for a community that was going to be disproportionately impacted by COVID. And then, COVID-19 got exacerbated by COVID-16, 19, and you have, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all of that, as I'm sure we'll discuss, breaking out. And so, that impacted us in Dallas because just last year we had, of course, what went down with Botham Jean and the conviction of Amber Geiger. And so what happened in both Louisville and in St. Paul, Minnesota, I mean, it triggered some stuff. And, you know, we've always tried to be on the front lines as it relates to all of that. And, you know, we have to be innovative for such a time as this. We have to work to keep the congregation as a community, while at the same time mobilize us to do the work. And the good news is, you know, I got more volunteers now than ever before. I got folk just begging to do some stuff because of the fact they want to maintain connection with church. And at the same time, they want to see the facility. At the same time, they want to do good work. And so that's been good. Our money income, I'm tripping because we're having our best year ever. And that's scary, but it's a witness to the greatness of God and the faithfulness of God's people. And I guess the last piece that really, you know, blesses me is that, you know, like Bruce, I have some good people working with me who have stepped up in a great way. I got some others who seem like they need to be pushed out. So we'll be happy to, you know, oblige them. But those who have stepped up, Doc, when I say they have stepped up, it's like this crisis released their gifts, released their courage, released their determination to make an impact. And not only that, but for me, what's been so powerful, it's like this crisis opened their eyes to what we've been preaching about for 37 years. And it's like, Pastor, I get it now. Let's do this, let's do that. And I mean, that for me has been gratifying. It just took 37 years, Jesus.
Yeah, well, the fact that people are still giving and serving during this crisis it really speaks to the confidence they have in your leadership and the confidence they have in the integrity of the ministry. Not every ministry is prospering today,
Yeah.
and not every pastor has this report. In fact, you have to be careful how you testify in certain quarters because it can conjure up more resentment than admiration.
Yeah.
You talked about pushing people out. I'm almost embarrassed. I shouldn't have had Dr. Williams on. He was with me in Ghana, and we were on our way to church one night, and he heard me encouraging one of my staff members, and he was so shaken by what he overheard. You would have thought somebody was about to fire him. So whenever he has a staff situation that may require some of that kind of encouragement, he calls me because he doesn't have that kind of spirit. So so now, Bruce, you can call Freddie when you have situations.
I was just getting ready to tell you, I promise you, if you ever need this man,
I will do it.
this man right here. Oh my God. Like I felt like I was getting fired. I was like, man, I felt so sorry for the dude on the other end. And he all the way, look, we all the way in Ghana, and I felt sorry for him. I was like, man, I bet you he gonna wish you stay in Ghana for the rest of your life.
But listen, Fred, you talked about Minnesota and Kentucky, but you had a pretty intense moment right there in the church parking lot with the right wing rising up and coming for you. Talk about that, because you see, we have all of our priestly functions, we have all of our prophetic utterances, then we have our community engagements, but this social uprising occurred, and we could not allow children to be the only activists on the field. And so both of you have been leading both the pastoral and the theological and the social at the same time. I don't think, you see, a problem we have is that the news, the national news, is only national news. And the local news is not of interest to the national news. And so a lot of people don't even know what happened to Friendship West on a Sunday. And so, Fred, talk about that.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. It was a Sunday, first Sunday in August, I believe, and I'm on vacation, and my phone is blowing up, and I have members who are saying they just drove by our facility where we are having, virtual worship. So it's only the staff in conducting worship, and they share with me that white supremacists had taken over our parking lot. So I thought it's a bad joke. White supremacists on our parking lot. We have a huge Black Lives Matter sign that hangs from our facility. We have, so it's just like I can't see this happening. And then the police chief called me and said, I hear that racists have taken over your parking lot. So I knew I had to get to the church, and sure enough, we discovered that one of our staff members had given permission to a group that presented themselves as a car club. Matter of fact, they're the Dodge Ram Club. The Dodge Ram Club, they presented themselves and they said that they were on their way somewhere that day and needed 30 parking spaces just to refuel on their way where they were going. And so we do it all the time where organizations say, can we use your parking lot? We got like 1,800 parking spaces. And so, we do that. That's just, what happens. But it's normally the AKAs, Deltas, Alphas, some group, a church group that needs it. But this is a Dodge Ram Club. So, our staff member said, cool. And then on that Sunday, when they showed up, it wasn't 30 vehicles, but it was over 1,000. And it was a Back the Blue rally in the age of George Floyd at a church that has a Black Lives Matter sign hanging from it. And, it's probably known as one of the blacker churches that you're going to find, especially in our area. And so it was shocking to, receive video of Trump flags and Confederate flags. And as we said to, some of the organizers, what you have to be careful about is you call it a Back the Blue rally. It looks like a white supremacist rally. And you have to deal with the fact that it's hard to differentiate between a white supremacist rally and a rally that's supposedly backing the police. Because when they look alike, that means you have some sincere internal investigation you've got to do and self-examination because you are aligning yourselves with racists. And so that happened that Sunday. Needless to say, the community was enraged. Like both of you, I'm blessed to have a church that does community activism, community development. And when I tell you the community, once they found out, they rushed to the church. Fortunately, the people who had come had gotten off the parking lot. The police had escorted them out, as well as some of my members who were too glad to escort them out. But when the community got word, the community rushed to the parking lot and basically, said, listen, this will never happen again to this church. I had a few cats who don't go to church, but they told me, you are our pastor. This is our church. We don't believe in going to church, but you are pastor. And just want you to know, you have free security that we are offering. Let me show you what I'm packing. I said, Doc, you ain't got to show me what you packing. It's cool. And so he said, I'm going to watch your house and I'm going to watch this church. This ain't happening no more. And that's when he hit me with these words. He said, you all have been about the community. Now it's time for the community to be about the church. And when I tell you, that just shook me in the best sense, because all of these years that we've been serving the community, to hear people in the community who don't go to church, they ain't planning on going to church, but they have been influenced by the witness of the church and will tell you they've heard me preach, but they don't come in church. And so however that works, they do it, but I'm cool with that. But it was an awesome time that started out an awful time, because the following Sunday, we said, okay, y'all brought 1,000. We'll see you 1,000 and raise you 1,000. But this time we're going to do a caravan through our community with all kinds of signs that speak of what our mission is about, speaking of justice, with the intent of doing voter registration, census registration, and signing people up. And I think you'll love this, Doc, signing people up to go to City Hall because City Hall, the city council was engaged at that, or getting ready to be engaged, I should say, in presenting the budget for what they were going to do for Dallas. And so a part of the economic justice work that I think you're about, I know you're about, had to do with, okay, we're going to sign up and speak to the immorality of a budget where you were cutting services but trying to give more money to police officers that are they already have an over bloated budget. And when I tell you our people signed up, and City Hall, literally the budget was altered because of what happened. So what happened on the first Sunday eventuated in the budget that was presented by the mayor and the city manager literally being altered. We ain't done yet, but the good news is that what started out evil, God worked for good.
Yeah, God connects all of those dots and things that you've done years ago in the community
Yeah,
were like seeds that you were able to harvest at a time when you needed a unified church and community. And what I love about our community outreach is that it creates partnerships with brothers and sisters who are not bound by the moral restrictions of Christianity. And sometimes, you know, it's like Nehemiah. Nehemiah needed folk to build the wall, but he also needed folk who could fight if needed. Uh, and so the wall was built because the people had a mind to work, but some other folk had a mind to watch the people who had a mind to work. But I want people to understand that pastoring the way you pastor is more than preaching on Sunday morning, and it's more than the priestly functions that everybody identifies with pastoral work. That it's holistic, it's nonstop, and in this instance, it pulled you off of vacation, because the truth is we're never ever completely on vacation. You know, folk sometimes say the preacher's day off is Monday. First of all, preachers need more than one day off. Everybody else gets more than a day off.
thank you.
But we're never off, ever.
Never.
We're never just completely off. So I want people to understand how busy you have been in the midst of the multi-layered pandemics that we've experienced. Uh, Dr. Williams, I've seen you with a bullhorn. I've seen you with microphones. You've been at the epicenter of the Breonna Taylor movement, the response to the murder of a young woman whose only crime was sleeping in her own bed at home. Uh, Tell us about some of those dynamics and how you've been able to manage the extension of your pastorate into the um, throes of social upset and social disruption.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes, I think the fight when it comes to social justice, the battle is wherever you are. So I don't think that people necessarily have to be in a demonstration necessarily to be a part of the movement. However, I do think there are times when it's important where your body is.
Yeah.
And I've been involved in demonstrations in the past, and I would have, there's no way I would have missed being involved, physically in demonstrations, in this case in particular, certainly, which the entire world was looking at. It happened here, and it happened as a consequence of lack of leadership in our city. And I think what had happened, a combination of an attempted cover up and COVID kind of took it off the screen for a minute, and people and then once we got wind of it, and it was communicated differently to certain leaders, as if it was just some drug deal gone bad and somebody got shot. And of course, as we found out the extent of it, then a number of things went into place. One of which had to be, and has to be, as it continue to be, that to dramatize the importance of dealing with this issue through protest. Protest leads to productivity. It's a way of giving leverage to something so that people don't go to sleep on it, and that action is taken, whether through policy change and the like, as you know. And So it's never something you do in and of itself. It's always a purpose behind it. And so that's why it's important sometimes where your body is, so that we can let public officials know that we're serious. You know, in this country, nothing, justice never happens in any quarter of this country because folk got up one morning and said, people in power, this is wrong. We should do right. Always happens as a consequence of pressure being put on. King said, that power is never voluntarily given up by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. So we've been at the front line of demonstrations. We've tried to be creative about it in terms of not only being involved in demonstrations in places where people expect, but going into suburbs and demonstrating so that people who live in suburbs will understand that they are connected to what's going on. Sometimes when people are in the so-called safety of the suburbs, they think they can be disengaged because what's happening in urban areas and the like doesn't affect them. But if you're on a plane and you in first class and coach catches on fire, you can't say it doesn't matter because we're in first class. If the plane goes down, everybody goes down. And so we had to make that, crystal clear to the community. They're still protesting. It's been, I don't know how many days now, but there's a place we've named Injustice Square. The community has named it. Some people have been there every single day for over 160 something days. And we plan to be there until justice is served. And of course, the whole nation knows what the outcome was in terms of the Attorney General, Cameron, but we're still not finished with that. And that's another story, but we're keeping the pressure on because justice for us means arrest and possible conviction of those policemen because they're not, for obvious reasons. But we've been on the front line. The thing that's been most encouraging to me is my members have been engaged, which means that a lot of the teaching we've been doing has caught on. Many of them were engaged before I was because I just didn't have the opportunity to do it as much. But when I'm out there, they're out there. And I'm not always out front because I think it's important for us to sometimes support what somebody else does. But our members have been involved in demonstration. They've been involved in creating other things throughout the city to supplement what's going on with regard to the demonstrations and the like. And time doesn't permit us to go through all of it. But I've been in a number of demonstrations and plan to be at more until justice is served. It's important not only to be there, but it's important to be seen there. Oftentimes the conversation is, where are the preachers? Where is the church? Well, when they say where is the church, they usually mean where are the pastors. So it's important to be there because here's the truth. For churches like ours and others, there wouldn't be a movement if the church wasn't there. You see what I mean? If I were to poll how many people were there from the church and ask them to raise their hand, they'd be all over the place because I think people think the church isn't there because pastors aren't there. But we've been involved, and there are a number of pastors who got involved at the front end. Some are coming involved, but I think it's important to be there and on the front lines. We've had some close calls with the police, and others have been arrested and the like. But it's just a part of prophetic work. It's one thing to be prophetic in the sanctuary when you're speaking to the congregation. That's speaking truth to the powerless, compassionately speaking truth to the powerless, but it's in public that you speak truth to power. And so it's important to be engaged. It has also stimulated and stirred a great deal of interest in allies. The last demonstration I was involved in had to do with an attorney who wanted to lead a demonstration from white communities to the square where we are downtown, and asked me to come speak at the onset of it. He didn't know who would show up or not. Hundreds of people showed up. And as we marched, more joined in. When they got to the square, there's a memorial set up for Breonna Taylor. When they got to the square, all those white allies surrounded the square, got on their knees and put their fists up in support. So there's I think some of the public leaders thought that if they just kind of waited and let this blow over, then they'd go back to business as usual. And we had to help them understand this ain't that. And so there's a tectonic shift that has taken place, and it will never be business as usual, not just because of the the pandemic, but because people are just in Louisville and across the country are tired of business as usual. That's why you saw, and I don't know if this is ever, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if this has ever happened in any recent history that I know of. But this case was the only one I know where there were simultaneous demonstrations in all 50 states at the same time. They've been, when King got shot and other thing, there were cities that burned and did, but this is the first time that I can recall ever reading about where there was in all 50 states simultaneously a demonstration about an incident that symbolized something bigger than itself.
Yeah, those dynamic bookends of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the acquittal or the non-indictment of the cops, right, I think created a catalytic force that we've never seen before. In response to George Floyd, 2,000 demonstrations in 2,000 different cities happened in this country.
Right.
And the majority of the protesters were white.
Right. That's unprecedented.
That's unprecedented, and it's why it gives us hope that we're going to see change.
Right.
We're going to see change, and it's going to come sooner than later. Now, speaking of presence. All right. That's the end of that conversation. Well, it's the end of that part of the conversation. We're going to accept the recommendation that someone made in the chat, and that is we're going to chop this conversation up. There's so many good parts of it. We're going to chop it up and make it a 4 or 5 part series and release it on YouTube for broader distribution. Yeah. The point I wanted to make more than any other point is that pastors are very busy. We have to prepare sermons to preach every Sunday, new sermons. We can't preach the same sermon week after week. We have to deal with sick people who get sick and have surgery. We have to deal with funerals, often personally. We have to manage staff. We have to deal with church operations. And often, as I think it was Bruce who said, people say, well, where's the church? What they really mean is, where is the pastor?
Right.
And so what we've done in D3 is we've assumed that the pastor's voice is important, but the pastor's work can be overwhelming. And so, ladies, talk about the way churches can leverage the pastor's influence, but not overburden the pastor if they really want to engage in a financial freedom movement.
You want to start?
Want me to go? Yes. There's so many ways, and I think one of the beautiful things about D3 is that we work really hard to support initiatives and things that are local with D3 as a tool. So we want to amplify their work. So if they have a finance ministry, we can help the finance ministry implement this into the work that they're already doing. Or like Friendship West, they're doing work in the community. They can implement D3 into work that they're doing in the community when they have components of helping people get financial education and really join and tighten up how they're dealing with their finances. So one of the things our team works really hard on is really understanding where that organization is and what they're doing as work, what they're doing in the community, what they're doing within the church, and how we can come alongside and help be the wind sail behind that work. So it is a way for them to do their work, I guess, better, and I don't want to say better, but do their work with our help. And so that's what we really try to do, is not be an additional thing unless they want it as an additional thing. And then we help them ideate the additional thing, and we help them, put their team together and strategize and launch that additional thing. But a lot of times the success is really finding the work, or them letting us know the work that they're already doing, and then we implement D3 right within that. And it's kind of a plug and play or a strategy to something that their team is already doing.
Great.
Yeah. And I would just add layered leadership. I put that in the comments, being willing to step up and say, this is something I'm passionate about. This is something I care about. I'm interested in working on this, and just being a part of that next layer of leadership. you know, a lot of times the pastor will lead it from the pulpit and say, you know, I came across this book in Dr. Soaries, and he may preach about it or talk about it. But then people will wait and say, okay, well, what are we going to do with it? And if the pastor doesn't preach it every Sunday from the pulpit, or if the pastor doesn't step up to do a Bible study, and what we just heard is if you're already in these different places, that may not be the case. And while the pastor may be passionate about it, he or she can't do all of the work. And so what we've seen in some of our most successful D-free ministries within churches is that leaders have stepped up, whether you're leading current ministry now, or, you know, you're passionate about the D-free movement and you become a leader. You kind of take the reins of it, and we train you, we help you to get all the information that you need. And with the pastor's blessing, you're able to kind of lead the movement on your own. I always go back to House of Hope, Greater Travelers Rest in Atlanta with Sabrina. Her pastor said, okay, fine, you do it. And she did it in a big way. And within a big church, she created a really strong D-free ministry, but she was willing to do the work for it. And they've seen great fruit and outcomes from it. And so again, when people are looking for opportunities to serve, D-free is a great place to start, because it is biblically based, but it's also very practical. And so you don't necessarily need to know the Bible, you know, frontwards and backwards to teach it the same way you would, a Bible study class. We give you everything you need to get started. And so I think just taking advantage of the opportunity to lead really helps some of our churches get started.
So many people don't know a lot of what's happening in D-free. I happen to know that there are 2 cities where there are groups of pastors that are either preparing to launch as a group, or they've already launched. I know Memphis is one that I've heard about, and Portland is the second one that I've been involved in. Bring us up to date, Janiyah, on what's happening in Memphis and what's about to happen in Portland.
Absolutely. So the 2, Memphis and Portland, are pastor coalitions. So it's a group of churches. Both of them have separate initiatives, much like I mentioned, that they're doing in the community, and economic empowerment, and they're addressing, you know, home ownership and affordable housing. They're doing some other work in the community together as the coalition. I think Portland might be about 20 some churches, and the one in Memphis is 40 to 50 churches. Part of what they're doing with that economic work is ensuring that not only their membership is okay financially, but then they're going to then in turn start to implement D-free into the work that they're doing in the community around these initiatives as a collaborative. So we're working with the pastor leadership of the coalitions. We've developed strategies with both of them, and we're actually rolling out with both of them. And they're actually really both almost on the same timeline, which is really great for us. But they've been training their leadership. We're rolling their membership into our D-free Academy. They will join. So I'm going to share that we are doing leadership training in April. So that's our little commercial. Next week, our pre-registration will open, but April, we're focused all on leaders that want to lead D-free and how we can help them with our digital tools and our new academy and all of that. So we're training their leaders. And then our next phase will be to roll them through, you know, our online programming, and they're determining how they're going to use the academy to facilitate their classes. So they're, to Tamika's point, you know, they're going to use our academy for the classes and then do small groups like we do with our Monday night sessions. But they have a really great, you know, next, I think, 3 to 6 month plan that we're going to roll to their church and then infuse within their community work and their initiatives that they're doing as a collaborative.
Yeah, that's great. So first of all, anyone is on the webinar today, if you live in Portland, or you have a church or organization in Portland or Memphis, and you're not a part of these 2 coalitions, you should contact us so that we can plug you in. That's number 1. Mm-hmm. Number 2, if if you know someone, you may not live in Memphis, but you may have a friend or cousin or partner or schoolmate, someone you went to college with, who is in Memphis or Portland. If you know someone, particularly churches, because this is very, very specifically rooted in churches. If you know someone who goes to church or leads a church or pastors a church in Portland or Michigan or Memphis, let them know. Let us know. We'll contact them because chances are they're not in the network. But the third thing is, if you're neither in Portland or Memphis, and you don't know anybody in Portland or Memphis, you're somewhere. If you'd like to pull together a coalition, it's much easier for us to work with a group of churches than it is an individual church. And I'll just tell you honestly, we try not to spend a lot of time with individual churches because it's just not cost effective. But you get, like Memphis, you get 40 or 50 churches together, and they're consistent and they're unified and they're passionate. Not only can you make a bigger impact on your individual church by being a part of a group, but you can get much more of us, our time, our attention, our resources, because it's just the economy of scale. It makes more sense for us in a given city to work with a group of churches than an individual church or two. And we learned that in Indianapolis. Yep. Pastor Webster, who is now a member of our foundation board, pulled together 20 to 25 churches in Indianapolis. And it's why Indianapolis is still the lead city for D3 in America, because groups of churches came together and they've been working together ever since. Tamika, how did your event go last night, by the way?
Oh, we had two events last night. We did an Instagram Live with Hope for Women, which is a faith-based magazine. It was their first Instagram Live, which I did not know, but it went really well. A lot of women and men on the session. And then the training and engagement team, a few of our new team members actually led a Young Money presentation for one of the Delta chapters at Rutgers.
Oh, good.
So that was a great presentation. Really, really good job. So shout out to our new team members that were on and kind of took the lead in presenting. Really good sessions last night. But to your point around like individual churches versus groups, it also normally takes one strong leader or one lead group to pull others in. So if you're the center spoke of influence in your community, or you're at the church that everybody looks at and all of that, and you know that if you did it, other churches would follow, that's also an opportunity for us to look at giving you the tools you need to galvanize locally. And so while it is an individual church, you're an individual church with a broader reach and a broader outlook. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the biggest church in the city. Influence is everything, and influence can happen at different levels. I always think about Pastor Craig in Alabama, small church, huge impact. And so we've trained his leaders years ago, and they continue to train other churches in the community. You know, their D3 classes stay packed. And so again, it wasn't a huge church, but it had huge influence within the community. And so if you feel like that is the group that you're in, you know, still reach out to us and we can help you to figure out how to become kind of that center spoke of D3 within your area.
Please, would somebody please send me Pastor Craig's phone number? I've been thinking about him. I remember, Janai, I think you came with me down to his church in Birmingham.
Yeah, I've been to Birmingham a couple times. I've taught classes in Pastor Craig's church with them.
Me too.
And, you know, I mean, you all remember this, but we were in Birmingham for something else, and so we scheduled to stop by his church, and we thought we were going there for a little meeting with his D3 leaders. And when we got to the building, he had a big billboard outside, welcome D3, with his sign. We had a church service scheduled.
Listen, they know how to take advantage of it. If you showing up, they're gonna make sure that it's worth you showing up.
Oh God,
I love it.
You just can't beat it. Listen, before I've got 2 or 3 more announcements I want to ask you to talk about next week's webinar. But I always want to know if you or someone you know is really drowning in debt, and you've got like bill collectors calling like I used to have, or you know, the debt has become more than a course can help with. If you need a professional debt counselor, if you say yes, we'll refer you to our nonprofit partners who specialize in direct support for people in debt. So if I never want to assume that everybody's doing okay and doesn't need immediate help. If you need immediate help, we don't provide it personally, but we partner with other organizations that do a great job. And we always want to make sure you connect with that. The other thing is, Tamika, I had a young man call me literally yesterday. He texted me 2 days ago, called me yesterday, and he's a young guy I met, oh Lord, about 20 years ago. And he now has a business. He's doing well. He's got $2 million in cash in a checking account.
Oh, wow.
$2 million.
So he really has $250,000 in a checking account, because Lord have mercy.
So he's current on his taxes. He has no debt, and he just doesn't know what to do with the $2 million. And I mean, it just speaks to the fact that when we talk about financial freedom and D3, we're not only helping people who have debt, we're also helping people who have money.
Right.
Of course, I told him he needed an accountant, first of all, but he also needs a financial professional. You may not have $2 million in a checking account or in a shoebox, but if your need right now is really to figure out what to do with money or assets, you need a financial professional. We are not professionals. We are professional motivators. We motivate you to see a financial professional. Just say yes. Say yes now, and I'll connect you with a licensed professional financial advisor. And again, we don't want to assume that everybody's broken, everybody's in debt. There are people like this young man. If you had asked me how he was doing, I would have never, ever told you, well, he's doing fine. He's got $2 million in a checking account. But just say yes, and we'll connect you with those resources. Now, my next webinar is 2 weeks from now. I can't remember the topic, but your next webinar is next week. What are you going to talk about next week?
Next week, we're continuing our Women's History Month. We've been featuring some women in leadership. So next week, we will hear from a financial advisor. Judith Lee is going to join us from Merrill Lynch.
Oh, good. Great.
So she's going to be speaking about the impact of COVID to women and their financial wellness and tips and things that they can do. We'll also hear from a newer pastor who's just implemented, Pastor Connie Jackson in Houston, who just has a really great ministry. And they just launched with the T&E team and got their folks in the academy. So we want to hear an update from her, and she's going to share best practices on, getting her folks that are virtual now into D-Free. And this will help us get ready for our April leadership training. So we want to share with people how some pastors are implementing D-Free in a virtual space.
Good. So everybody that's on, when you see the announcement, just share it with your networks, because every week we try to bring you substance. Next month, ladies, I plan to announce relationship at the very least. I plan to have as guests people that provide financing for those of us who want to buy, fix up, and sell houses in our neighborhoods. And I'm very excited about that because, again, our emphasis on debt, while it's important, it's not exclusively what we do. And I made a commitment last year to spend more time this year helping people figure out ways to increase their income, because we need money and there's money to be made. So I'm very excited. Tamika, what is the date of the mid-year leadership retreat?
July 16th and 17th. That's a Friday and a Saturday. We are literally getting ready to start planning for you to get our speakers lined up. Just know that you'll hear about it really, really soon. We're going to have some pre-work for you to do in the academy so that you're primed and ready for the speakers that we'll have for you on that date. We will be focusing on leaders, but there will be some general information sessions for people that just drop in and want to know what's happening in the D-Free world. But we are working now to plan for what's going to happen in July, and we're excited to have you all. So just stay tuned to the website. In the meantime, our webinars every Wednesday, our Monday night live check-in. So if you're on the Academy, I see a few familiar names here. If you're a part of the D-Free Academy, we check in live every Monday. It literally is an open Q&A format. And so if you're interested, you can sign up for the D-Free Academy, and we will see you on Monday.
Great. That's wonderful. I missed this past Monday night. I told Janai I'm doing some research on another aspect of finance, and I needed to attend the webinar at the same time. But I knew you had an outstanding guest from Moneyline, and so
Yes.
you didn't need or miss me. But wonderful. Listen, everybody, thank you for being a part of our experience today, and I pray that you will get in touch if you have a question, a need. If you have an idea, get in touch. We are family, we're a movement, and we're determined to help set financial captives free. God bless.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.